So we probably are all aware that there are 3 books in the Bible written by Solomon: Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. But Solomon the man is an enigma in many ways. He's so different to his father David. Solomon reigned for 40 years, so that bit's the same as David, but not much else. And the main thing about Solomon is that he was a prolific writer. 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 32 says that he wrote 3,000 proverbs and 1,005 songs. So I went hunting and did a bit of a Google search to see whether or not 1,005 songs is a lot or not. And I discovered that Dolly Parton had written 3,000 songs, and that Bob Dylan and Paul McCartney were the next highest. They both wrote 600 songs each, and that's where they've made their money, from those 600. So 1,005 didn't seem that low. I didn't check the more modern singers, so I'm not sure where they fit on the list. But you've got to remember this, brothers and sisters. Solomon wasn't just a prolific writer, was he? He was also a prolific builder. He was a prolific gardener. He was a prolific winemaker. He was a prolific trader. He had prolific resources, wealth, horses, wine. And he was also a prolific lover. The record says he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. It's lucky he found any time to write anything, to be honest. Now, the immediate sense that one gets from Solomon is that he was a deeply dissatisfied young man. He wrote 3,000 proverbs, okay? Now, can there really be 3,000 new themes to write about? Clearly, there are many repeats, and some of you have spoken to me and you're going through Proverbs. And I'm sure you've come across many repeating proverbs. Okay, the words are slightly different, but it's the same proverb, repeated over and over again. So saying it once wasn't enough for Solomon. And we go to select one of those proverbs, don't we, so that we can put it on our desk at work or on the back of the toilet door or in the kitchen, okay? We don't need all the other 23 that say the same thing, do we? We just take the one. How many palaces do you really need? How many gardens? How many vineyards? How much silver? How much gold? How many horses did he really need? Clearly, he was never satisfied. How many wives did he really need? You know, I did a little bit of a calculation, so we know he had 1,000, all right? And he reigned for 40 years. So do the math. That's 25 a year. That's one every fortnight. And let's take into consideration that he probably only had a few wives for the first few years. Okay, we know Naamah was his first wife. She's the mother of Rehoboam. Then he had Abishag, who was David's last wife. And then he married Pharaoh's daughter. So give some time, you know, for him to fulfill the role of being king. As soon as you start doing that and you start curtailing the number of years by which you can have the rest of the 996 wives that were to come, the closer they are together. It becomes once a week. Now, I know that some marriages break down, and in fact, out there in the world, they break down within months sometimes, don't they? So I went looking to see who we might know had the most husbands or wives. I'm not sure if you could guess who that was, but a name that the young people might not know, but I'm sure everybody else knows. Liz Taylor had 7 husbands, didn't she? And one of those she married twice. But 1,000? Really? You see, Solomon had a deep dissatisfaction with life. He was never happy. He was never satisfied. He had the inside workings of a frustrated and tortured soul, trying to find the golden elixir of happiness. And that's something that mankind's been doing like forever, isn't it? In fact, It's been enshrined in your American Constitution. The second paragraph of the American Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Not just happiness, but the pursuit of happiness. So the pursuit of happiness is an American constitutional right. But of course, the question begging in that statement is, can you find happiness without a recognition of your Creator that gave you that unalienable right? Is there happiness outside of an acknowledgement of your Creator? Well, that's what Solomon wants to find out. And we want to see tonight, brothers and sisters and young people, Solomon's undertakings in this area of satisfaction and happiness. So we had that reading in chapter 1, and probably to make it simple, I've decided not to go with the PowerPoint tonight. We're going to do it the old-fashioned Bible class way, and we're going to listen. So hopefully you don't miss some of these things that are worth writing down. If you want to know how chapter 1 should be divided, it's divided into 2 parts, and it's quite easy. It's quite easy to remember. Verse 1 to 11 can be titled The Question. And verse 12 to 18 can be entitled The Quest. I like to call it the 2 Q's in chapter 1. The question and the quest. So, the question, verse 1 to verse 11. Let's have a look at this part first of all. Verse 1 and 2 said this, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem, vanity of vanity, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Life is worthless. It seems pointless. And Solomon comes straight out with it, doesn't he? Right there in verse 2. And then comes this question. So verse 1 to verse 11, the question. Here it is. What profit hath a man of all his labour which he taketh under the sun? What advantage is there in all one's labour, one's effort, one's work? What benefits are there? Now, this word profit is the Hebrew word yithron, okay? Y-I-T-H-R-O-N, yithron. It means advantage or benefit, and it's only found in Ecclesiastes. It's used 10 times in Ecclesiastes. Let me show you one of the uses in chapter 2. Come over to chapter 2 and verse 13. It says in verse 13, then I saw that wisdom excelleth folly, as far as light excelleth darkness. That word excelleth is our word yithron. In other words, when it says wisdom excelleth folly, it's saying that wisdom is more advantageous than folly. It's got more benefit than folly. Just like, he says, light has more advantages than darkness. Light is more advantageous than darkness. And that's true, isn't it? If you've done a study on light, you will know that sunlight allows you to see. It illuminates. Sunlight gives warmth. Sunlight generates vitamin D. Sunlight starts the photosynthesis process for beginning the food chain. Sunlight has enormous benefits. Darkness does have benefits. He's not saying that darkness doesn't. Darkness will help you get to sleep tonight. Sleep is vital. You'll die without sleep. Darkness helps generate melatonin. It can give cover for an enemy out there on the battlefield. You can escape in the cover of darkness. You can hide in the darkness. But of the two, between light and darkness, light has far more advantages than darkness. You can sleep in the day if you need to, don't you? Like we came over on the plane, we can put those headbands on with the eye covers and you can fall asleep in the day if you need to. But you can't work, can you? You can't work without light. You can't get vitamin D without light. You can't have photosynthesis without light. The whole food chain would collapse. Darkness is really just the absence of light. Well, says Solomon, what's more advantageous? A life lived with God or a life lived without God? That's the question. This word prophet is derived from the Hebrew word yathar. So yithron was the actual word, but the word that it's derived from is yathar, Y-A-T-H-A-R. And that means that which remains over, that which is left over. So just like you have a business, okay, so I'm a business owner, so I know these terms. Some of you might also own a business and you have profit and loss statements, don't you? And you use money to purchase or build products or provide services, which you then try and sell, hopefully for more than it cost you to make, at a higher price than your expenses. But once you've deducted all your expenses from your income, if anything is left over, okay, yathar, then that's called your profit. The business has been worthwhile. It turned a profit, we say. Well, says Solomon, forget about your business. What about your life's work? Is that worth your while? At the end of your life, will there be anything left over that you can hold up and say, well, yes, that's what made it all worthwhile. That is so satisfying to see. Or will there be nothing left over? Nothing to hold up, just an empty shell, just a hollow life, a waste of a lifetime, pointless, meaningless. We'll come back to chapter 1 and verse 3. What does he mean when he says, what profit hath a man of all his labour? Well, in that phrase, he's referring to the cycle of life. And in regard to the cycle of life, he has two particular cycles he's going to refer to: the cycle of nature and the cycle of human activity. So let's take the first one. So verse 4 to 7, you might like to entitle that, the repetitive cycle of nature. And it's relentlessly repetitive, isn't it? So take verse 4. One generation passeth away, and another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. So one generation comes and then goes, and then another comes and then goes, and then another comes and then goes. On and on and on. In verse 5, he talks about the sun. The sun goes round and round and round, day in, day out. It's relentlessly repetitive. In verse 6, he talks about the wind, how the wind blows up and down continually. It goes north. Northerly winds turn into southerly winds, that back into northerly winds, and then into southerly winds, just continually going round and round and round. In verse 7, he talks about the water cycle. The water cycle goes round and round. Evaporation form into droplets that create clouds that drop rain, which form into rivers that run into the sea and then evaporate. Form into droplets, create clouds, drop rain, round and round and round. The relentless cycle of life. But that relentlessness, brothers and sisters, in nature is also seen in our lives. So verse 8 to 11, you might like to title that, the repetitive cycle of human activity. And we find in verse 8, first of all, he talks about eyes and ears. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. We're constantly looking for new things, aren't we? With our eyes and our ears. If you were to sit down and stare at the same thing for hours on end, you will go mad. Won't you? Unless you're extremely nerdy. And then you could do it for hours. But even then, it would be a struggle to maintain it for a lifetime. Think YouTube, think Instagram, think TikTok. Think the relentless scrolling and surfing for something new to hear or see. That's what he's saying. There's nothing new under the sun, but you're still trying to find it, and you relentlessly pursue that. And that's why some of those companies make the most money. Verse 9 to 11, he talks about the thing that hath been, it is that which shall be, and the thing which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. Verse 9 to 11, that which is now has already been done before. There's nothing new under the sun. The relentless cycle of human activity, life, brothers and sisters, is like a treadmill. It just goes round and round and round and round. And Solomon hated it, brothers and sisters. He hated it. It frustrated him. It tortured him. It churned him up. Just come to chapter 2. Look at this, how he describes this in verse 17. Therefore, I hated life, he says, because the work that is wrought under the sun is grievous unto me. It's torturous. It's painful. It hurts, he says. Verse 18, yea, I hated all my labor, which I had taken under the sun. Now, just think about that for a minute, all right? Do you hate all your labor that you do in your life? Okay, so you've got a job. Do you enjoy your job? Do you get satisfaction out of your job? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe you would like to get another job. Solomon had the best job in the world because he could choose whatever job he wanted on any given day. Today I want to go out in the garden and do some gardening. Oh no, today I want to do some winemaking. No, today I might write some poems or another song. Or today I might go and meet some dignitaries and have some international business. Or today I might marry another wife. He had the choice. And he's still unhappy. He's still dissatisfied. So, hopefully you can see what I mean when I say that I think Solomon was a deeply dissatisfied young man. He couldn't find any satisfaction, and it tortured him. He was deeply unhappy with what he observed, and he was completely unsettled by it. It rocked him to his core. How do you find satisfaction in the midst of the relentless, repetitive cycle of life? When you get up in the morning and you go to work or school and you come home and you go to bed, and then you get up the next morning and you go to work or school and you come home and you go to bed, and then you get up the next morning, you go to work or school and you come home and you go to bed, and then you get up the next morning, you go to work or school. The relentless treadmill of life, isn't it? Seems pointless. What's the purpose? Is there anything left over that you can make you say, well, that was satisfying? Now, I know there's some of you sitting with smug smiles on your face because you don't go to work or school anymore. You've got the luxury of being retired. Well, I would suggest that even being retired, it might be a bit different, but it's still repetitive, isn't it? You know, you get up and you have breakfast. You do some work in the garden, visit friends for a coffee, go to the library, do a bit of shopping, visit the doctor. And you come home, you go to bed. And the next day, you wake up, you have some more breakfast, do some work in the shed, visit friends for coffee, go to the library, do a bit of shopping again, go visit the dentist this time. Come home and go to bed. Still pretty repetitive, isn't it? But it's often also with less purpose than you had when you were working, when you needed to earn to provide an income to raise your family. Or maybe in your retirement, it's actually with some frustration that you can't do what you might want to do because you've got physical ailments now. And you want to help your children, you want to help your grandchildren, but, well, you can't walk. Arthritis has set in. What's left over that you could say in your retirement, well, that was very worthwhile? So Solomon undertakes a quest, brothers and sisters, and the breadth and the height and the depth of this quest is huge. So the first half of chapter 1 was the question. So come back to chapter 1 and verse 12. Well, here's the quest in verse 12 to verse 18. Verse 12, I, the preacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under the sun. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of men to be exercised therewith. He was going to leave no stone unturned in seeking out why there was this seeming sore travail, he calls it in verse 13. This sore travail that God had given to men to be constantly exercised with. You'll see in the margin that the word exercise therewith means to afflict. This God given to the sons of men to be tortured with, to be afflicted with. He saw it as an affliction. Solomon wanted to get to the bottom of it. Why am I tormented? Why am I being exercised with affliction, he says. And of course, in verse 16, Solomon was the best qualified to undertake this quest in all history, wasn't he? Have a look at verse 16. I commune with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I have come to great estate. So he's got all the resources, hasn't he? All the money that's needed, all the time, all the resources. But in addition to that, he's also got all the wisdom, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. So he's the best person to undertake this quest. He's got all the resources and he's got all the wisdom, great estate and gotten all wisdom. So he was going to experience all these things for himself. He says in verse 17, I gave my heart to know wisdom, to know madness, and to know folly. I'm going to go down these three avenues. I'm going to weigh them up. And then in verse 18, we get what I'm going to suggest is a summary of his initial perception. This is where he's at when he begins this quest. This is what he was thinking and feeling at this point. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. Now, is that true? Is that true? The wiser you are, the more grief you have? So we're at Shippensburg University. So students come here to get more wisdom, don't they? They learn, they have an education here over a period of time. Do uni students who end up coming here have more grief than a non-uni student who never came to university? Is that true? I'd suggest it's not really as true as what Solomon is saying. Why is Solomon saying this? Well, you see, Solomon is the wisest man that ever lived. But he's also feeling this immense grief. And he, at this stage, has come to the conclusion that for him, more wisdom has brought more grief. Now, this is quite interesting because in reality, Solomon didn't experience much in the way of adversity at all, did he? All right, quite literally, he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He faced a little bit of challenges to his throne at the start, but actually he had all the backing of the previous king, David, his father, in the succession plans. And so he was able to secure the throne with relative ease. On his part, that is. There were no wars with surrounding nations. There were no internal rebellions of any real size or threat. He was never, for example, on the run from a mad king. He was never living in a cave, scrummaging for food. He was never cut off from family or friends, like his father David was. And those things, we know, helped David immensely to have an absolute trust in God going through all of that adversity. And it's true, isn't it? Adversity can shape a man in a way wealth and pleasure and freedom cannot. Actually, Solomon acknowledges this. Just come over to chapter 7 briefly. He actually acknowledges this later on. He says this in verse 2 to verse 4. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. Sorrow is better than laughter. For by the sadness of the countenance of the heart is made better. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. So Solomon basically is saying that you'll learn about life much quicker by attending a funeral than you will by attending a wedding. Adversity is really a brilliant teacher. You grow up much faster. You learn things much quicker. And David, of course, did that. But Solomon's going to take a lot longer because he hasn't had this adversity, has he? Solomon had everything given to him on his plate. He had to fight nothing to get it. The biggest fight Solomon had, brothers and sisters, was inside here. The questions that tortured him. Those questions, brothers and sisters, for which he struggled to find adequate answers, caused him to write this book. Now, you live in a land of freedom, okay? Down in Australia, down under, where we all stand on our heads, as you say. We call it the lucky country. All right, we live in the lucky country. We have no adversity. All right, we have everything given to us on a plate. We can relate to Solomon, you see. He had all these questions. Questions like, what's the point of life? He'd never had to fight for it. He has had everything at his fingertips, and yet he clearly isn't satisfied. You do all this work, you gain all this wealth, you build, you plant, you sow, you write proverbs, poems, and songs, all for what? This is Solomon's struggle in a nutshell. In fact, I'm going to suggest, brothers and sisters, that the sentiments of Ecclesiastes are actually those of someone who is going through a midlife crisis. Questioning their decisions, questioning their choices in life, second-guessing their motives, wondering if it's all been worth it. What's been the point of it? Should I start again? Is it too late to start again? Have I chosen the right things for me? For example, do I have the right job? Could have I chosen a better job? To get the better job, did I go to the right school? Did I get the best education for the best job? Did I choose the right subjects while I was at school? Did I have the best parents to help me choose the right subjects? Do I have the right friends? Did I choose the right wife or the right husband? Could have I done better? Is it too late to find out? Did I do the right thing in having children? Did I give them the best start? Did I help them enough? Do I have the right religion? Do I belong to the right ecclesia? Did I help brothers and sisters enough over the years? Did they help me enough over the years? Did I invest in the right areas, whether it be in finance or in relationships? Did I study the right hobbies? Did I purchase the right house? Was it in the right area? The list, brothers and sisters, is endless. But at the root of all of those questions is a sense or a feeling of dissatisfaction. And that dissatisfaction breeds doubt. Because there's no way of knowing if something is right for you or not, is there? Unless, of course, you can have multiple lives and explore every option. You know, have enough money to be able to buy multiple houses to find out which is the right house for you. Test them all out. Have multiple jobs. Give them all a go. Move around multiple ecclesias till you find the right ecclesia. Study multiple degrees, from medicine to engineering to finance to agriculture, to find the right job. Have multiple wives or husbands till you land on the right one. Now, that's impossible to do. It's never going to be able to do that. So the questions come, don't they? Did I choose the right, whatever it is? Did I choose the right, whatever it is, actually depends on what you were looking for. So then starts your quest. What am I looking for? And I don't know, for some of us, for some, this takes them out of circulation for a while. Sometimes it takes them out of circulation for a number of years. Some people fall into depression because of this, or develop other mental health issues. Some seek medical help, or therapy, or counselling, or medication. Some just chuck it all in. You might know some. Okay, my best man in my wedding did exactly this. Chucked it all in, ran away, left their job, their partner, their kids, and started all over again. Some just struggle for the rest of their lives. They remain dissatisfied. But some brothers and sisters and young people come through the other side with a better perspective on life. They become a better wife or a better husband. They become a better father, a better mother, a better employee, a better employer. They become a better brother or sister in the ecclesia. And so I don't mind admitting, for the purpose of this study tonight, brothers and sisters, that I've had my midlife crisis. And it did take me into the depths of depression. I did struggle immensely with the purpose of life. What's the point? I was deeply dissatisfied with my job, my family, my parents, my ecclesia, my siblings, everything. Just wanted to chuck it all in. And yes, it came as a result of overworking. I was pursuing happiness, and I got burnt out. I was trying to work my way to satisfaction, and I crashed mentally and physically. But then, as a result of that, came all the questions and all the doubts. And I know some of you, brothers and sisters, may have gone through something similar. Some of you may even be going through that right now. Well, Ecclesiastes, I'm going to suggest, was written especially for me. And especially for you if you're going through that. Because I suggest that Solomon went through a very similar experience. Maybe not the depression, maybe not the mental health issues, but certainly the questions, the doubts, the fears, the anxiety, the worry, the frustration, the dissatisfaction, the sense of unfairness, the unhappiness with life. Solomon experienced all of that. And yet he was able to have, and he did have, all the multiple houses, didn't he? He did try all the multiple jobs. He did study multiple subjects. He did have multiple wives. And he still found no satisfaction. So what was his conclusion, brothers and sisters and young people? Well, I actually think that deep down, Solomon knew the answer. He knew it all along, actually. But because he was so dissatisfied, he still just had to check. All right? Just the same as I knew all the answers. I know that I knew those answers, even when I was at rock bottom. And some of you may know the answers, even though you are deeply dissatisfied. So come to Ecclesiastes chapter 9. Here, Solomon is starting to sum up his conclusions. And in this chapter, particularly verse 1 to 12, he's going to give us some of his conclusions. But his conclusion is bookended by two certainties. Okay? He's starting to sum up, and he's going to tell us in chapter 9 that there are two certainties in life. These two certainties are in verse 1 to 6 and in verse 11 and 12. They sort of bookend his conclusions in verse 7 to verse 10. So two certainties. So here's the first one in verse 1 to 6. The first certainty is this, that it's absolutely certain that one day you're going to die. Absolutely certain that you will die. Have a look at verse 1. For all this I considered in my heart, even to declare all this, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. No man knoweth either love or hatred by all that is before them. So he begins by saying no one can know the future. It's all in God's hands. No man knoweth either love or hatred. In other words, no one knows when love or hatred is going to come their way next. Just by observing life, you don't know when the next moment in your life might cause hatred or love to come your way. Where will it come from next? It's quite interesting, actually, that there are two books in the Bible where God is not mentioned. The book of Esther and Song of Solomon. At the core of the book of Esther is Haman's hatred. And at the core of the Song of Solomon is Solomon's love. The two extremes of human beings in our emotions and feelings are seen in love and hatred. That these are things that you can't control in other people. You don't know when someone's going to show and demonstrate love or hatred to you. All you can do is control those two things in yourself when you react to that. That's all you can do. So in verse 2, he says, all things come alike to all. There is one event to the righteous and to the wicked. One event happens to all. Well, what's that one event? Well, verse 4, he says, for to him that is joined to all the living, there is hope. For a living dog is better than a dead lion. The one event that happens to all is that you all die. Everybody dies. Whether you're righteous or whether you're wicked, whether you're clean, whether you're sacrificing or whether you're not sacrificing, whether you're a sinner, whether you're one that swears, whether you're one that makes an oath, doesn't matter. The certainty is that you will die. And so you can't stop that from happening. And verse 4 is saying that a living dog is better than a dead lion. Now, I don't know how many of you have a puppy dog at home, all right? Some of the cutest little things on the planet, all that fur. I told you that we have 3 children, but really we have 4, and the 4th child is the best child. Yes, it has a tail and it's a ball of fur, but it's so loyal, isn't it? Back here, brothers and sisters, dogs were scavengers. Dogs weren't pets. Think of Jezebel, licking the blood, eating all the flesh, couldn't stomach the head, the hands, or the feet, but everything else, the dogs were scavengers. So back then, a dog was something to revile. But a living, scavenging dog is still better than a dead lion. All right? Today, dogs, you know, you can give them a funeral even. Have you ever heard of that? Crazy stuff. Pay big money. But this is talking back in Solomon's day. The living have an advantage in verse 5 and 6 over the dead. The advantage is they're alive. So that's certainty number 1. Certainty number 2 is in verse 11 and 12. The second certainty is that it's absolutely certain you don't know when you will die. Life is completely unpredictable. Have a look at verse 12. For man also knoweth not his time. As the fishes that are taken in an evil net, and as the birds that are caught in the snare, so are the sons of men snared in an evil time. You don't know when it's going to happen. So there they are, the two certainties of life. You're going to die, but you don't know when you're going to die. It's absolutely certain for those two things. So in between these two certainties, Solomon gives the beginnings of his conclusions in verse 7 to verse 10. Look what he says. He says, "Go thy way, eat thy bread with joy, and drink thy wine with a merry heart, for God now accepteth thy works." Eat bread, drink wine. That's interesting. Bread and wine's come up again here in the context of Solomon's conclusions. For God now accepteth thy works. The meaning behind those words, brothers and sisters and young people, I'm going to summarize for you like this. I think that that's telling us that God takes pleasure in your pleasure. God accepts your works. What are your works? Well, your works are to be happy and to enjoy life. And when you're happy, God is happy. I came across one translation that put it like that. God is happy when you're happy. That's the sentiment. That's the idea behind that phrase. Verse 8, "Let thy garments be always white, and let thy head lack no ointment or perfume." So when do you see somebody in white and they're wearing perfume? All right? It's a wedding, isn't it? Live like you're at a wedding all the time, he says in verse 8. Make life joyous. Verse 9. Live joyfully with the wife whom thou lovest all the days of thy life of vanity, which he hath given thee under the sun all the days of thy vanity. For that is thy portion in this life, and in thy labour which thou takest under the sun. Enjoy family life. Enjoy the wife of your youth. Enjoy the children of God's providing. They are his heritage given to you by him. And then in verse 10, enjoy your work while you're still alive. Whatsoever thy hand findeth to do, do it with thy might. For there is no work, no device, no knowledge, nor wisdom in the grave where you're going. You only have one life. Brothers and sisters and young people, don't waste it. Enjoy it with God in mind. Life is a gift, he's saying. Make the most of your opportunities so that at the end of your life, there will be a profit. It will have been worthwhile. So, final conclusion of Solomon. Come over to chapter 12. He says in chapter 12 and verse 13, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole man. Now, if you do that, brothers and sisters and young people, this provides the ultimate satisfaction, doesn't it? This provides the whole purpose to life. To fear God, to keep his commandments. That is the whole man. They're complete when they do that. Now, it's rather interesting that had Solomon done what Deuteronomy 17 told him to do, and we've come across this already this week so far with Brother Jesse, in Deuteronomy 17, just come back to Deuteronomy 17, had Solomon done what he was told to do in Deuteronomy 17, he would have already known this conclusion already. So Deuteronomy 17, it says in verse 18 that the duty of a king, and Solomon was a king, it says in verse 18, and it shall be when he sitteth upon the throne of the kingdom that he shall write him a copy of this law in a book out of that which is before the priests, the Levites. And it shall be with him, and he shall read therein all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Yahweh his God, and to keep all the words of this law, and to do these statutes, and to do them. So he was to write out a copy of this law. He was to write out the book of Deuteronomy. The word Deuteronomy means second law. He was to write a copy of this law. And if he'd done that, brothers and sisters, he would have got to chapter 6 and found the very conclusion that he went for 40 years looking for. Have a look at Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 2. Because God had already given the answer through Moses way back here in Deuteronomy chapter 6. Verse 2. That thou mightest fear Yahweh thy God and keep his statutes and commandments. There it is. If you haven't already, right next to that, Ecclesiastes 12, verse 13. It's the same words. And yet Solomon took that horrible, long, drawn-out, anxious, dissatisfied journey to reach that conclusion. God had already given him the answer. We know the answer, brothers and sisters, but some of us are going to go through some of these things that Solomon went through. But by God's grace, you'll come out the other side, as I believe Solomon did, a better person, a better servant for God, a better brother or sister, a better father, husband, wife. Let's just finish in 1 Timothy and just read these words in 1 Timothy chapter 6, brothers and sisters. To sum up everything that we've been looking at tonight, I think Paul does a wonderful job here in 1 Timothy. Just going to read these words. I'm not going to comment on them. Just going to read these words from verse 6 to verse 12. And leave it with you to ponder them and sleep upon this tonight. Verse 6. But godliness with contentment is great gain. It has loads of advantages. For we brought nothing into this world, and it is certain we can carry nothing out. And having food and raiment, bread and wine and clothes, therewith be content. But they that will be rich, that have the multiple houses, that have the multiple gardens, that have the multiple degrees and jobs, fall into temptation and a snare, and into many foolish and hurtful lusts, which drown men in destruction and perdition. For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But thou, O man of God, flee these things and follow after righteousness, godliness, faith, love, patience, meekness. Fight the good fight of faith, like the Levites we saw this morning. Lay hold on eternal life, whereunto thou art also called, and hast professed a good profession before many witnesses.